Have you ever met Miss Lindy? She's a gal with the bright red hair. Now she stands out from all the rest. You know her anywhere. Well, she's mine. Yeah, she's mine. Well, I love that little girl. Well,
hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Unknown Cameras, a series where I explore old and unheard of cameras. In this video, I will be going over the Nikon F. I'll be explaining the origins of this camera, the little history behind it, and also how it works, and also show you some picture samples to go along with it. So let's get started. I want to start off by saying that calling this an unknown camera is a bit of a stretch for me, because to me this is like the most recognized camera of all time, in my opinion. I've seen it all over Full Metal Jacket and any sort of Vietnam War movies. I've seen this camera in movies all over the movies. This camera came out back in 1959, a time where rangefinders basically ruled the camera world. And this was Nikon's first SLR, not the first SLR ever, but Nikon's first SLR. And it was actually the first SLR to be embraced by professional photographers from all over the world. So this camera was a big deal back in its day, and I feel like it is still a big deal, at least in my heart it's still a big deal, because I really like this camera. However, it's not as praised as it should be, maybe after this video, I hope. But this camera really deserves a lot more attention and just praise, in my opinion, because it's been all over the place. It's been to space. Yes, this has been used by NASA to go to space. It's been throughout all sorts of movies throughout the decades. And of course, most notably, it's been in the Vietnam War. It's been in many conflicts. Used by reporters from all over the world. It is a very, very historical camera. Can't really stress that enough. I can, but I just don't want to. So now I'm going to cut to me showing you how this camera works. So for starters, this camera does not look like your typical 35mm SLR. What makes it different from the other cameras is you basically can remove the top level viewfinder. To do that, you press this little button right here. While you press that down, you want to press down on this lever here, and then you just slide it off. By removing the top viewfinder, this pretty much turns the camera into a waist level viewfinder. However, it does reverse everything on the screen, which does take a little bit of getting used to, but it is quite helpful when you want to get low angles or just stealthy shots when you don't want your subject to notice that you're taking their picture, because that's what photographers do, or at least that's what I do. So this top window is actually the light meter. However, the light meter on my camera does not work, unfortunately, but normally the way you would turn it on is press this button. And when you want to turn it off, you just press it down again. Now the battery for the light meter actually goes in here. It takes a mercury battery, which doesn't exist anymore, but I actually do own a mercury battery that still works. However, when I put it in this camera, the light meter just wouldn't work. So to reattach the top level viewfinder, you want to set your camera to 5.6, and then you want to press down on this lever again and just slide it on. The reason as to why you want to set the aperture to 5.6 is for you to reattach the little lever that you see right here back to the lens. So right over here you would find your shutter speeds, and you would rotate by rotating the top knob here. The highest shutter speed is 1/1000th of a second, and it goes all the way down to 1 second and bulb. Turning to the top of the camera here, there is no hot shoe. There is a thing here that you can attach a cold shoe onto it, but it's really not the most convenient thing in the world. The other downside to this camera is that it does not have a cable release option. Yeah, you can't really attach a cable release anywhere around this camera, which is a bummer. My camera came equipped with a 50mm 1.4 lens, which is quite beautiful, and is also capable of producing beautiful images, just not when it's in my hands. And it also came with this lens hood that you can just remove, and the camera just looks a lot more chunkier, so that's why I keep the lens hood on the camera. When it comes to rewinding your film, instead of having a button at the bottom like most SLRs, the rewind button is actually on the shutter button itself. What you want to do is just want to rotate it from A to R. Once you do that, you're clear to rewind it. to load your film, you just basically want to open up the camera, and then you load your film. So the story behind this camera is that I got it from a garage sale for $80, which at the time I thought it was a little bit pricey, but at the same time a good price, because at the time these cameras were going for about $200 to $150, somewhere around there. And I did buy it in order to resell it for double the price. However, I quickly fell in love with this camera. I shot hundreds of rolls through this camera. I traveled with it. I went to war with it. So to address the elephants in the room, yes, this camera has been basically been the main camera in the Vietnam conflict. You've seen it in all sorts of movies: Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, My Dreams at Night. The things I do. Okay, so in all seriousness, this camera has seen a lot of conflict during the Vietnam days. Not sure if my particular camera that's sitting here on my desk has seen all of that, but this camera line is pretty notorious when it comes to the Vietnam War. Like I mentioned earlier, you see them all over the place, all over Vietnam movies and pictures and history books and all sorts of stuff. Fun fact about this camera, a reporter by the name of Don Nicolin, does that ring a bell? If it doesn't, you really should look him up. He is a pretty notorious, infamous, amazing photographer back in the old days. His life was actually saved by this camera when the camera took a bullet aimed for his head. Don't know the exact details of this story, but all I know is that the bullet was going for his head and it hit the camera. So one can only conclude that he was taking a photo, casually taking a photo, and next thing you know he gets hit with the bullets with the AK-47 round and lived. Which means that this camera is bulletproof, which is very good to know, especially for me since I live in the gunshine state of Florida. Yeah, it's bad. I've owned this camera for about 3 years already, and I gotta say it's always my go-to camera whenever I want to take photos in sketchy places. I travel to many different places with this camera. It's taken my abuse that my cameras usually receive when they're in my hands, but this camera can handle it. This camera can handle everything, to be honest. It just so happens that some of my best work was shot with this camera, which is another big reason as to why I love it. I mean, sure, the camera didn't take the photos, I did. I guess I got lucky, but it just happened to be with one of my favorite cameras ever, and I just really appreciate this camera for that. So yeah, with all that being said, let me know down below in the comments what you thought of the Nikon F. Have you ever shot this thing? Will you ever consider getting this thing before the prices skyrockets? Because I'm telling you, this camera is an unsung hero and it deserves more praise. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I had a blast making this video, running around through the jungle with mud all over my face and explosions and gunfire and helicopters.